came late.
Okay, we're on Facebook. We're not, rabbi's never late. Rule number one.
Rabbi, I heard that.
Okay, good morning, everybody. As we go to the Chumash of today, and we're holding, today is Thursday, we're holding the fifth reading of the Parshas Shoftim. We are holding on chapter 18, verse number 14. Because these nations, which you are inheriting them, they follow these kind of soothers and whatever's. Yishmu, they listen to these things, but you shouldn't be like this. This is not what God has given to you. What does it mean to hearken to the diviners, Rashi says? Of the auspicious times, so says it. For he causes the divine presence to rest upon prophets and upon the Urim Bitumim. So if you need to, they're not soothsayers, it's not just people that look on the tantalizations, whatever, the mazolis, etc. Navi Mikebecha, prophet from your midst, Kamaini, like me. Yakim Lecha, you shall put upon you, Hashem Alek, Yakim Lecha Hashem Alekecha, which God will put upon you, Eilaf Tishmaun, to him you shall hearken. Mikirbecha Ma'achecha Kamaini, actually this means, just as I am amongst you, from your brothers, so will you set up for you another prophet in my stead. And so on, from prophet to prophet. According to all that I have asked the Lord our God, the Chaydev in Mount Chaydev, the Yom HaKal, the time of gathering, Lamer saying, we cannot listen, we cannot continue to hear the voice of God. The great fire, we cannot see it any longer, and we shall not die. And God said to me, Eitivo, Asher Dibedu, it's good what they have spoken, that it's impossible for humans to hear the voice of God and continue to live. Navi Akilem, I'll establish a prophet, Mikedav Achayim, from their brothers. Kamecha, like you, and Asati Dvara B'fiv, and I'll put my word in his mouth. You'll speak to them. As kol asher atzavenu, everything that I command. Verse 19, and if a man does not hearken to my words, I will speak in my name. I will exact of him. Verse 20. But if a prophet intentionally speaks a word in my name, Asher Leitzivisi, which I have not commanded to say, and who speaks in the name of other gods, and that Navi shall be put to death. With which I command his fellow prophets. Even though his words coincide with halacha, Jewish law, forbidden what is forbidden or permitted what is permissible. But he's saying, you know what? We should do it not because God commanded us, some other God commanded us. Meis bechenek. So he should be put to death by strangulation. 3 sinful prophets are executed by man or by the court, meaning by the court. One who prophesizes that he's not heard, that has not been heard. One who prophesies what has not told to him, but was told to his fellow prophet, and one who prophesies in the name of a pagan deity. However, one who suppresses his prophecy, does not announce it, or one who transgresses the word of a prophet, or a prophet who transgresses his own words of his prophecy. The death is in the hands of heaven. As the verse says, I shall exact it. So the Gemara learns, the Gemara Sanhedrin learns how you do these 2 verses. Because in one verse it says, you shall kill him. Another verse says, you shall put death by God. And that's the difference. The Gemara learns out, it depends what he did. So certain things, what he did is put to death by man. Certain things is put to death by God. And now you might say to yourself, how will we know the word of the Lord did not speak? How do we know? How do we know? This alludes to the future times when Israel will want to know which prophet is speaking the word of God. It means you are destined to say this when Nina the son of Azur, the false prophets, came and prophesied, behold, the vessels of the house of the Lord will be returned from Babylon now hastily. And Jeremiah stood up and cried concerning the pillars, concerning the sea, concerning the remainders of the vessels, which had not been exiled. They shall be brought to Babylon together with the exiles of Zedekiah. So how do we know which prophet is true? There were many prophets. We know, the famous story of Eliyahu Navi, who stood up against 400 false prophets. If a prophet speaks in the name of God and the thing does not occur, and it does not, it does not occur and does not come about, that is a thing that the Lord has not spoken. Zodin Dibra Hanavi Leisogu, remember the prophet has spoken warningly, shall not be afraid of him. This is a very interesting pasuk. It's not so clear, and therefore many Gemaras on this, as Rashi brings down the Gemara Sanhedrin. So we're talking about, he says this thing is destined to happen to you, and you see afterwards it does not come about. That the thing that the Lord did not speak, so execute it. But one might say, this applies to one of the prophesies regarding the future. However, suppose one comes and says, do such and such a thing, and I'm telling you, by this, the command of the Holy One, blessed be He. He does not know whenever he's speaking the truth. Regardless, so how do we know? We're not talking about the future guy who says that this is going to happen. The guy who says, the prophet comes and says we should do a certain mitzvah, certain command. So how do we know? So the truth is, how do we know regarding speaking the truth? They are already commanded. If someone comes to him and tries to stray you away from the commandment, if somebody comes and says to go against the Torah, and even though he's prophesying these and he's showing you wonders, you're not allowed to go against the Torah. You're never allowed to go against the Torah. Nobody's allowed to prophesy as if he makes the biggest miracles in the world. Can he go against the Torah? Do not hearken to him. Unless you are certain that he's a perfectly righteous person. Unless there's always exception to the rule. Like Eliyahu Bahara Carmel. Eliyahu, the Mount Carmel, that's the famous example that's given of Eliyahu Bahara Carmel, which he brought a sacrifice out of the Beis Hamikdash. He brought a sacrifice of Har Carmel, which is in the Haifa, and that was in essence something that was against the Torah, seemingly. But he said that he did it in the moment. We sacrificed the high places when the high places were forbidden, but did so in order to control Israel against idolatry. Everything must be done according to the needs of the time and the needs of the preventative measures to protect against breaches of in Torah. Therefore, with respect to authentic prophets, it's taken, it's hearkened to him. So that's why it's a very thin line to be very careful with this concept, because you have to be very careful. People could say that the Jews have history has shown us we fall into false prophets, and we have to be careful that the prophet that we comes, like you have to be like Eliyahu Navi, has to be like Elijah the prophet, yet tzaddik, not somebody who's somebody who's an influential person. Do not restrain yourself from advocating his guilt. You should not be afraid to punish again. That completes the chapter. Chapter 19, verse number 1. The Lord your God cuts out the nations whose lands of the Lord your God is giving to you. That's so. You're going to inherit it, but you're going to dwell in it. Bareim in their cities, Bateim in their houses. Shalish Arim Tavdalach. You have to separate 3 cities for yourself. These are the cities of refuge. Arim Miklat. In midst of your land, which God is giving to inherit. These 3 cities, as we know, these 3 cities have to be situated that all three of them are, that everywhere somebody's close, wherever in Israel, you're in a distance, same distance of these three cities. You're not going to bunch these three cities together. You're going to make sure to put these three cities in strategic places, or wherever you are in Israel, you're at the same distance to get it. And furthermore, you have to make a road to these cities. You should make sure the roads are always available and capable for a murderer that killed somebody unintentional to get to that city. You separate, divide the land into three. So you have to make sure that wherever a Jew is in Eretz Yisrael, he's the same distance from one of these three cities. And that there's a highway that is made to this city. Tachal HaDerech means further, not only Tachal HaDerech, you have to put signs. Maklat, Miklat, refuge, refuge, was inscribed on each crossroad, directing way near a city of refuge. So everybody knew where the city of refuge was. So that the distance, as I mentioned, from the beginning of the border to the first refuge city should be the same as the distance from the first city to the second. Make sure that you divide the land, that you know where each and every one of these cities are, that everybody is the same distance wherever you're in Israel, and so from the second to the third, to the opposite of the border. So when Moshe Rabbeinu divided three cities across the border, and now Moshe Rabbeinu commanded Yeshua and the Jewish people going to Israel, they have to do the same thing across the border. 3 cities of refuge across the border, and 3 cities of refuge on the other side of the Jordan. And this is the case of a killer who runs there. What kind of killer are we talking? A murderer we're talking about? An unintentional murderer. A murderer that kills somebody intentional. Who likes sending a until she doesn't hate the guy, but he killed him unintentionally. That's a shogeg. We know we have in the Jewish law different kinds of murder, like you have in civil law, in secular law too. You have a murderer, somebody. We have a mazid or a karav mazid. Somebody who's close to he's not intentional murder, but he's not an unintentional murder. And then you have an unintentional murderer, and then you have somebody who's an inus, just an accident. So you have to know the laws. There's laws of an accident, unintentional murder, not unintentional cut. It's called somebody who's close to intentional, and they have intentional murder. Amazing. So that's the law. The city of refuge really only is for the unintentional murderer. It doesn't help the murderer intentionally. It doesn't even help the murderer who does it. He's between intentional and unintentional, and the person who's a total accident doesn't need to have a city of refuge. So therefore, we learn many. The next pasuk says. So this is an interesting thing, because in Torah law there was no concept of a jail, even for murder. There was no concept of a jail. So a person that killed intentionally, or even in between intentional and unintentional, he was put to death. If he did intentionally, he was put to death by court. If he did unintentionally, a cutter could have put him to death, like a relative. And then an unintentional murder had to live in the city of refuge. It was not a jail, it was a city. And he had to live in that city, as the Torah says, until the Kohen Gadol passed away. And a person that killed by mistake totally, he's totally free. A man goes to his fellow into the forest. He's chopping wood, and his hand swings the axe to cut down the tree. And the iron flies off the handle. This is a fascinating Gemara. So how you learn this pasuk, and so he's swinging his axe backwards, or he's thinking frontwards. The whole Gemara, whether he's swinging frontwards or back, how exactly what the pasuk means. That he's going backwards, his hand is backwards. As he goes backwards with the axe, the top flies off. And the top of the axe flies off and it kills somebody. A mace. That's a shogeg. That's an unintentional murderer. But can't say total accident because he's the one who's swinging the axe. So that's an unintentional murderer. Mace beyond the he has to run to one of these cities of refuge, and he should live in the city of refuge. So that when he's about to let the axe fall on the tree, so it's going frontwards. Meaning his hand sways while letting the stroke of the axe fall upon the tree. Similar, the words Aboka Kishamtu, he renders the Targum as Argi Megaditaria, the oxen swayed. So again, this is a very look at the next Rashi. It's the whole Gemara. V'noshel habazel manates, and the iron flies off the handle. Some of our rabbis say that this means the iron's head of the axe slipped off its handle. Or others say the axe chipped a splinter of wood of the tree. So exactly what happened over here. There's a whole, as I said, learn Gemara, and you can go into the Gemara exactly how unintentional murder, whether it's, as I said, the axe is going backwards or the axe is going frontwards. Rashi says, brings down, I think, the halacha that's going frontwards. And also, is it the iron that fell off the axe, or while he hit the axe of the tree, a splinter flew from the tree and killed somebody? Now, why does a person have to go to the city of refuge? And lets the avenger of the blood pursue the Retzeh. Yachim levave while his heart is hot. And if it overtakes him, because it's a long way. Be cold nefesh, and you kill him. And if the Goyal Adam kills him, he doesn't have punishment by death. He lays say no because he didn't name him either. This happened only because he murdered somebody. He murdered his relative. So the Abish gives the Goyal Adam, this is only a Torah law. God gives the Goyal Adam, the relative, the right to kill a murderer, somebody who killed his family, and therefore, if the guy doesn't get to the city of refuge and the avenger of the blood kills him, he's not punished by death. Once he gets to the city of refuge, now the Goyal Adam cannot touch him. That's what I'm telling you, to make a city of refuge. If I command you, you should separate yourself 3 cities. The will extend your boundary. Extend the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael. And he'll give you even more lands as he promised your fathers, which Rashi says, as he swore that he would give them the Canaanites, the Kenizzites, and the Kadmonites. So the land will grow. So then you'll make, as the Torah says later, make more. Because you'll follow all these commandments, lasses, to do. Which I'm commanding today, to love your God. Is going in his ways. All the days. So if the land of Israel comes bigger, then you have to add another 3 cities. Because if the land of Israel comes bigger, we need to make sure to have more cities of refuge. So thus altogether we'll have 9. 3 on the other side of the Jordan, that never got bigger, and 3 on the land of Canaan, and 3 more in the future when God expands your boundaries. So altogether, it's 9 cities of refuge. You should not spill innocent blood in your land. Which God is giving you as an inheritance. Because if you will not make these cities of refuge, then the blood is in your hands. That's all an unintentional murder. But if somebody hates his fellow man, and he waits for him in ambush, come alive, and he gets up on top of him, and he Nefesh kills him, dies. And he will also run to one of these cities. We're talking about intentional murder. So he goes and he kills somebody. Guy goes and kills somebody intentionally. He runs to the city of refuge. Rashi says, guy hates his fellow, lies wait till though this man hates his fellow. He comes to lie and wait for him. From here, our rabbis deliver the maxim. If a man transgresses a minor command, he will ultimately transgress a major command. That's what the Torah also wants to teach us. That from a shoygin comes amazing. Everything starts off unintentionally, but if you don't fix it, it goes into intentionally. And since the transgression command, you shall hate your brother in your heart, you will ultimately come to shed his blood. This is why it says here, if a man hates his fellow, for it should have been written only, but if he rises up and lies and wait, why does the Torah say that he hates him in his heart? I want to tell us, everything starts off with hate. So running to the city of refuge is not going to help him. The elders of the city shall send and take him. He shall deliver him to the avenge of the blood, but Mason he will. And this is an interesting law because we know he has to go to court first. So this is also interesting, exactly what the Torah is talking about over here. And that's why in Torah law is very interesting that we have an amazed is punishable by the court. Punishable amazed means somebody didn't do it intentionally, he's not punishable by the court, he's punishable by the avenge of the blood. That means ultimately a guy who killed somebody not intentionally or not amazed, but amazed, close to an intentional murder, he will always be running for his life. And that's why Cain, that's the story of Cain. Cain killed somebody, there was no witnesses, so they couldn't put him to death because it was not amazed with witnesses, but he was not an unintentional murderer. And therefore he was a nut v'nut. He ran for his whole life. And God had to put a sign upon him that people shouldn't kill him. Ultimately, a great-great-grandson killed him. So in essence, the city of refuge will only help for a person that is unintentional murderer. That's the law. And everybody else will ultimately be, if your guy is an intentional murderer, he's killed by the court. If he's not intentional, he's between the intentional and unintentional, he's a nut is to run for his life because somebody in the family can anytime kill him. Sachas einecha elav shall not have pity upon such person who kills intentionally. Ubaita damnaki misrael v'tevlach shall abolish the shedding of blood from innocent from Israel, and it'll be good for you. This is a famous statement that we still take today. What do you gain out of killing somebody who killed somebody? You're killing two people. What do you gain? The person that he killed is not coming back. What do you gain out of killing somebody else? That's what he's studying until today. That's why people are against capital punishment for this statement. You should not say the first person had already been killed. Why should you kill this one too and cause two Israelites to be killed? What are you gaining out of killing somebody else? So the Torah says the reason why you kill this person is ba'aita harami. That's what's an interesting expression. You're not killing him because he killed somebody. You're killing him because you get rid of evil. And that's what you're ba'aita damnakim. So you should get rid of people that have murder on their, the capability of murdering. So they have rat damnakim. And that's why you have to kill this person. That completes Chumash. Now I go to the Tanya of the day, and we're holding the 12th letter of the Alter Rebbe. That's in the Tanya. As I mentioned before, a lot of these letters are about tzedakah, about charity, and the way the Alter Rebbe expressed the concept of charity. The reward for the act of tzedakah will be shalom. Verse says that the reward for the act, maisa, tzedakah, is shalom, is peace. Avodas tzedakah, and the reward for the service of tzedakah, hashchet, will be quietness. Vetach will be surety, ad olam forever. So this is the verse. So some commentators explain that you have two expressions. We have Maisa, at the beginning of the word Maisa tzedakah, the act of tzedakah, and then you have Vodas tzedakah, the service of tzedakah. So the Maisa tzedakah brings peace. The service of tzedakah gives the concept of tranquility and quiet. So some commentators explain the word, the act Maisa, and the service are one and the same. The verse merely reiterates the same theme in different words. Agiyenison, however, writes that act and service indicate two different forms of charity. The reward for act of tzedakah is peace, and the reward for service of tzedakah is eternal quietness and surety. So that's the way Targivenis, Alter Rebbe is going to explain this Targivenis. To understand the difference between action and service, what's the difference? Service is an action. And therefore, the difference between bein shalom lahashkit, between the difference between peace and quietness, chulu, etc., can be understood. We can explain this according to what our sages of blessed memory said on another verse. Shalom bimrema. We all know this verse. Shalom bimrema. He who makes peace on high places. What does that mean? He who makes peace bimrema in his high places, Yasa Shalom Aleinu, should make peace by us. What does that mean? Where's bimrema? Where is in the high places? That's in the heaven, in the spiritual heaven. What's happening in the spiritual heaven? That God needs to bring peace. Because in heaven, we have Malach Michal. Malach Michal is the prince of water, which is Chesed. Malach Gavriel is the the prince of fire, which is Gevurah. And they're opposites. And guess what? They don't distinguish one from the other. They live in harmony. Malach Michal and Malach Gavriel, which are opposites. One is fire, one's water. So fire should distinguish water, and water should distinguish fire. But the Eibush should bring shalom. So though water seeks to quench fire, fire endeavors to vaporize water, and Michal is the prince of water, and Gavriel is the prince of fire. Nevertheless, they don't distinguish each other. What is the meaning? What is the meaning of this medrash? The medrash actually, that not Michal, the substance derives from the spiritual elements of water, and Gavriel substance derived from the spiritual elements of fire, but Shemichal Sar Shel Chesed. Meaning, really, the deeper meaning of the medrash is that not Michal is water and Gavriel is fire. What is water? Water is Chesed. Anika b'shem mayim, kindness. Michal is the attribute of Chesed, which is kindness. That's why it's called mayim. Because why is water symbolic to kindness? Because kindness is the kind that comes to something higher. So somebody gives me kindness, or I give somebody kindness. I give somebody kindness that he doesn't have. I give him that kindness. So it comes from a higher place to a lower place. So too, mine comes from a higher place to a lower place. So Michal, Chesed, is symbolic to the spiritual realm, the descent, meaning the bestowal of the fusion of divine life force from the higher to the lower. That's Chesed. Chinas Eish, the opposite is fire. Fire doesn't go up, down, it goes up. Shetiv Lalos Lamaila, fire is its nature to go above. And that's Bechinas Gevurah. That's the concept of Gevurah, strength, severity. The upward, the withdrawal of the life force from below to above. So Aish is symbolic from below to above, which it wants to go away from the world. Fire wants to always jump away from the wood or whatever is holding it down. Of course, gevura, that's severity. It doesn't want, in order not to bestow, except by any way of an immense contraction. So that is the difference. That's Malach Michal and Malach Gabriel in a spiritual sense. Malach Michal is the giver. He one who diffuses the light that wants to reach everybody, the light that wants to gift everybody. And Michal says, wait a second, this light cannot be given to everybody. Light needs to be put away. This light, by giving it to everybody, will be used and abused. We need to contract this light. We need to hide this light. We need to bring it higher, this light. We need to take it away from below. We need not to give it so much below. And that's Gevura. And if you understand this concept, you'll understand that Chesed and Gevura, to the core, they are opposites. They are opposites. And not only the opposites, they conflict with each other. Chesed represents unlimited fusion, and Gevura represents limitation, contraction. They're opposite. And they're total opposite that fight with one another seemingly. But only when they are the pristine state of attributes. When Chesed is Chesed, and when Gevura is Gevura, in their pristine state, there is a great contradiction between the two. So much as the attributes are inherently limited, and indeed the very word midah means measure, so midas chesed, each of them is confined to its innate characteristics. Chesed is expansiveness, Gevura is withdrawal. So if you take each of these attributes, midas chesed, Michal is expansiveness. That's what he does. And in the midah itself, it's very measured. That's why Michal is very narrow-minded. An angel itself is very narrow-minded because that's his avodah, and he doesn't understand any other avodah. That's why Michal is the opposite of Gabriel. That's why the Eibush starts to make shalom, as the Alter Rebbe will continue. But if you take the midah in itself, midas hachesed is diffusion, and anything that wants to stop it, it just cannot handle. That's Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu is chesed. The opposite is Yitzchak. He's a total opposite. And that's why Avram Avinu says, Yishmael is good enough for me. Because Chesed said, what makes difference to me? Who is the one who's receiving, whether he's good or bad? I am a giver. Irrelevant to me who the receiver is. What the receiver is, he's very narrow-minded in a way. And therefore it's a midah. That's why it's a midas chesed. It's not unlimited chesed, but it's very narrow-minded chesed, because it's a chesed that has no. It's just chesed. It's about the chesed. It's not about anything else. Not about who's going to get the chesed, who's not going to get the chesed. It's not important to the chesed. Midas chesed is about giving. And that's why it's interesting. Water is about chesed, but ultimately too much water. As we say when we pray for water, l'chaim v'le'elam avis. It shouldn't be too much water. Too much water, too much chesed is also not good. So that's why chesed needs to have gevura. But that's why over here we're holding in this part of the letter, without it ever explaining, midas chesed in its pristine matter is does giving. But it's a midah. That's why it's very sort of say very straight-minded. And gevura is self-understood. Also, when Gevura takes the Gevura on itself, the concept of constriction, he doesn't care about who he's going to constrict from. He is constriction. Therefore, he doesn't want to give to the good or to the bad. It's irrelevant to him. He just wants to constrict. And because therefore, he's going to say that even though bad, I don't want to give to bad self-understood, but even though good are also going to lose out of not receiving. He says, I don't care, because there's this aspect of negative in the world and darkness in the world, and the world shouldn't have this light. Nobody should have the light finished. That's my avodah, to constrict this light. And therefore, that's why we're in Gullus. Gullus is Gullus for everybody. We're all stuck in Gullus. Because Gevura says, I have no issue. My point is to constrict. It's my avodah. as the mother says, expression of our life, look, everybody will now suffer because of Gevura. That's a sadness. When you have Gevura without a mixture of Chesed, now everybody suffers. The good and the bad, they all suffer. So if I'm in a bad mood, now suddenly everybody suffers. Those that should maybe suffer, and those that don't shouldn't. But they're all in the ray of Gevura. So now the Gevura is unlimited, and in a way, because it's narrow-minded, and I'm Gevura to everybody. And because that's when you take these two midas HaChesed and midas HaGevura, and you take it into their pristine situation. So Chesed is Chesed, and Gevura is Gevura, and the total opposites. And that completes the Tanya of the day. I would hope to continue, but it completes it today. And today is the 5th day of the month, which is in the Tehillim. It's chapter 29 to chapter 34. Chapter 29 to chapter 34, you do the chitas of the day. Not to forget that today is also we add 3 chapters, 13, 14, and 15 in your Tehillim. And that completes the chitas of the day, my friends. Make sure at 10 o'clock today, we're going to have a class by the Rebbe for the portion of the week. You can come either to Chabad, or you can hear it here on Zoom or on Torah Direct, Facebook. But come and learn a beautiful sikh of the Rebbe on the portion of the week. I wish you all a wonderful and beautiful day. Someone will blow the shofar?
Sure.
Blow it.
Okay. Ready? Okay.
Yep.
Morning.